Being a dad isn't always easy, but it's the best thing I ever did. I'm constantly improving myself to be the best dad I can be through fitness, nutrition, mindset, and lifestyle. As fathers, we pass on many things to our children, such as our mindset, our habits, our attitude, and what we've learned along the way. Each of these will shape who our children are and who they will become. The Warrior Dad's mission is to help you become the healthiest version of yourself, to hone your edge, and to live with purpose. My name is Jim Bertamy, and this is the Warrior Dads Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Warrior Dads Podcast. Today I am by myself and talking about water. So today, it might not seem like the sexiest topics, but I guarantee you're going to get a lot out of what I have to say today. And basically I'm going to be focusing on how our water can actually be making us unhealthy and the negative effects that water could be having on our kids. So please be patient with me. I'm definitely going to share a lot of good nuggets in today's episode. I just want to say thank you for coming back to listen to another episode. I have some really good ones already recorded with some really awesome guests, so they're going to be coming out next week. I've been doing one podcast a week, except for the 1 week I was away on vacation, so I apologize about that. But it's going good. I'm getting a lot of good feedback, so I really appreciate that. And I mentioned at the very, very end in the little outro that I made, but if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast, and then leave any comments depending on where you're listening to the podcast. Leave any comments, thumbs up, thumbs down. Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. Any way to improve the show, but it just shows support and helps me to continue to bring stuff that's helping you. So back to today's topic, water. Again, not the sexiest of topics, but it's super, super important. I always tell my clients the best solution for pollution is dilution. And what I mean by that is that, if we're not able to get good quality food, whether we're just, we're out and about, we're at a restaurant and they don't have it, or we're traveling and we're not in a familiar area and they just don't, the availability is not there, we can control the type of water that we're drinking. And there's so many different types of water out there. There's new bottled water popping up all the time with claims to be the best water out there and this and that, all these benefits. So I want to just briefly touch on bottled water today, talk a little bit about the pH balance, the mineral content, but then I really want to get into the reason that the main reason I got inspired to do this particular episode is I think there's so much about water that people don't know. I mean, there's actually so much about water that scientists still don't know. And there's actually scientists that study water all the time, and there's some really interesting experiments that have been done throughout the last 100 years that I wanted to share with you, because it could actually be having a negative effect on our health with all of these different factors that I'm going to talk about today. You add all of them up, and it could be a disaster of what's happening in the body, and could be contributing to putting rotten water in our body. And we're only as healthy as our organs, and our organs are only as healthy as our cells. And with 55 to 75% of the body being made up of water, and a lot of it being in our cells and our organs, it could be really bad news, like really bad news. And it's actually a really serious issue that I don't think a lot of people understand. So another reason I'd really love you to subscribe and maybe share this episode around, because this pertains to every single human being on the planet. And now with all of these advances and electronics and things like that, which I'll talk about how they affect the water, it's directly affecting our kids. And our kids are the people of tomorrow, and they're going to be running the show one day. So arming them with this kind of knowledge and getting people to understand what can be actually happening can be huge. So anyway, let's dive right into it. So first two things I want to talk about: pH balance and mineral content. When we're looking at bottled water, those are the two things we really got to factor in. And then also the third thing that we have to factor in with bottled water is really the type of water bottle that the water is in. So first, pH balance. There's a lot of videos. I'm not going to get too deep into this, because you can go on YouTube and look at these videos on there where people have these pH drops, and they have all these little water samples of all these different bottled water like Voss and Eternal and Fiji and Evian and Dasani and Aquafina and all this stuff. And I would encourage you to educate yourself a little bit, but I will give you some of the nuggets from those videos. There's a lot of water out there that is acidic that people would be very, very surprised at. So Voss, very, very acidic water. And when we're talking about mineral content, not to jump back and forth too much, but when we're talking about mineral content, you want to have around 300 parts per million. Some of the companies don't even put how many minerals they have in the water, which sometimes is labeled as TDS, total dissolved solids. You want to have around 300 ppm, parts per million. That's just a good amount of minerals to have in the water. Evian exceeds that. They're over 300. I think they're in like the 320s. Fiji's somewhat close to it. They're in like the 230s, 220, something like that around there. Actually, they might have actually gone up in the 240s. It's been a little while since I had Fiji and looked at the back of the bottle. Typically, if I am going to get bottled water, I always go with Evian. So that's my choice that's my go-to water, especially if I'm traveling. So, what was I talking about? Oh, so the pH balance. So, pH balance of Voss is absolutely horrible. It's very, very yellow. It's very acidic, and their parts per million for total dissolved solids is 70. Again, I said you want to have around 300. They're 70. I think it's probably just really popular because people see celebrities drinking on TV. It's featured in movies and stuff like that. It's just a very plain cylinder, very simple cylinder bottle. It's absolutely crap. Aquafina, very acidic. Dasani, very acidic. Both of those, Aquafina is made by Pepsi and Dasani is made by Coca-Cola. They don't even list how many minerals they have on there, so I just completely avoid both of those. But aside from the mineral content, you don't even want to drink it because it's too acidic. So, why do we not want to drink acidic water? Well, because too much acidity in the body is not good. It can lead to things like fatigue, poor digestion, muscle pain, joint pain. You can have skin problems, bad breath, cramps, migraine headaches. All these kinds of problems can lead to too much acidity. And also, depending on what kind of diet you're having, in addition to the water that you're having, it could be just acid overload in the body, right? So you have to look at the diet too, more fruits and vegetables and things like that. Well, not so much. I mean, I don't have too many fruits, but the more vegetables you can have, that's going to be obviously more alkaline, which would be the opposite of acidic. So they're going to be more alkaline. Meats and things like that are going to be more acidic. I'm not saying stay away from meats, but it's just something to know, right? So the more you know, the better choices you can make. I say that all the time, so it's probably not the last time I'm going to say that. So pH balance, definitely look on YouTube. Look at all the different waters that are out there. See if the water that you drink is on the list of being acidic or if it's alkaline. And then, so I know like Propel. Propel is very, very alkaline. So that's good, but then you have to look at the mineral content. And the other thing is, don't don't be fooled by somebody's marketing campaign. So Propel, yes, they do have a good amount of minerals. I don't know what it is parts per million, but realistically, where is the water coming from? Are they filtering it themselves? Like Dasani is just filtered through reverse osmosis. So I think they're basically just taking tap water and filtering it through reverse osmosis and then throwing some minerals in there. And really the minerals are just in the form of sodium. So you can do that yourself. You take some high quality sea salt and you put a pinch of that in your water bottle, and boom, you just increase the electrolytes, increase the mineral content of your water, and that's it. You're done. So when you do that, and I actually do recommend doing that because there's actually a couple benefits to salting your own water. It increases the minerals, like I said, which increases the electrolytes. So if you're doing a really big workout, you're going for a really long bike ride, a run, something like that, you're really active, you're sweating a lot, you're losing those minerals. So you want to replenish them. So using a high quality sea salt is going to be a hell of a lot better than any sodium product or electrolyte blend that these companies might be using because they're probably not getting a high quality source. So some good sea salts that you can use. The research shows that better sea salts, or the sea salts that contain the least amount of mercury in them, come from France and New Zealand. So I'm not saying Himalayan sea salt is bad, but I would recommend looking into getting a sea salt that comes from either France or New Zealand. A brand that I really like that we use in this house that does come from France is Celtic. Celtic. Celtic sea salt. Awesome company. Awesome product. We usually do the light gray sea salt, and it's light gray because it actually even has more minerals in it from the clay ponds that it collects in Brittany, France, off the shores of Brittany, France. So I would recommend Celtic. So putting a pinch of high quality sea salt in there is good for that, again, the electrolytes and the minerals, but then it also helps to feed your adrenal glands because your adrenals thrive off of salt. So if you're overly stressed, or you have a lot of, or you're feeling a little bit extra stressed, it's a good idea to put a little pinch of sea salt in your water bottle. If you've ever noticed that when you are feeling a little stressed out, you might actually crave something a little salty, and your body usually just will associate whatever, like potato chips, they're salty. French fries typically tend to be salty. So your body actually might crave French fries, or potato chips, because your body associates those things with being salty, and your body needs more salt to help feed your adrenal glands because you're producing a lot of cortisol and adrenaline because you're overly stressed, all this stuff, right? So high quality sea salt, add a pinch to your water bottle. That can increase the mineral content right there. So looking at the pH balance, looking at the mineral content. So check out online, just Google, alkaline water test in YouTube, and I'm sure something like that will pop up. Okay, so kind of moving into more of the realm that, the more meat and potatoes of today's podcast, and this is really what I want to share with you. And there's a good amount, but I'm going to try to, have a nice flow to it. But there's a couple different experiments that I want to share with you, and then how this can actually tie into our health and then even our kids' health. So really, really cool stuff. But like I said before, I think I said it, there's still a lot that science can't explain about water. For example, why does water have the highest surface tension of all liquids on the planet? Right? They can't explain that. Why is water the only substance on Earth that can actually exist in all three states: a solid, a liquid, and a gas? Science still can't explain that. So it's baffling to people, and we're still learning more and more about it. One thing that we do know is that water can actually act as a hard drive, and it has a photographic memory. So water molecules, when they come together at a microscopic level, they form what are called clusters, and they act as a memory system. And it's actually been shown that water records its whole history of its experience in the world. So again, just like a computer hard drive. So water has memory to it. Okay, so it can be it's affected by its environment, which a lot of people, I don't think, know. Right? So water can actually have a huge impact on our behavior. And the way that we see that is because the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences did an experiment where they took all the same species of fish, and they took water and they put it into the tank. But before they put the water in the tank with the fish, they subjected the water to a super weak magnetic impulse, which electrically charged the water. But again, it was super weak, but it still electrically charged the water. So what happened is that they started to notice very, very shortly that all of the fish in the tank started to develop this dark gray stripe along their belly, along the lower portion of them, and that these black spots started to develop on the fish that were never there. And then not only was it the physical changes on the outside, but then they started to notice that their behavioral changes started to come up with the fish, and they all started to kind of act the same way, and kind of almost robotically, from kind of like the way I took it, that the fish started to have like a robotic behavior. So if we're electrically charging the water with very low frequency magnetic impulses, my question to you is, how strong do you think our cell phone is and our computers are compared to those small magnetic impulses that were being charged into the water? I mean, our cell phones are so so powerful. If you've ever held your phone to your ear long enough on a conversation and felt your ear get hot, it's actually what's actually happening is all of the signals and the radio waves and the electromagnetic frequencies going through your phone are literally microwaving the water in your ear. That's what's happening. So our cell phones are super super powerful, and one thing I would encourage you to do right away, and even maybe as you're listening to this podcast, get your phone the hell away from your water bottle, because you could be electrically charging your water from having your cell phone too close to it. I mean, it's still affecting. There's Wi-Fi going through my house right now. There's Wi-Fi all around us. It's not like we're ever going to be really able to get away from this stuff. But if we know this stuff, then we can minimize the effects and the impact that these things can have on our water that we're drinking. Because then you have your water bottle sitting next to your cell phone or your computer or something like that, and then it's being affected, and then you're drinking the water. Well, what's that doing to your body? How is that affecting it? Um, so, if water's being able to pick up on electromagnetic frequencies, then wait till you hear this next part. Water can actually have musical impressions imprinted onto it. So there was a study done by Dr. Masaru Emoto. I think I'm saying it right, Masaru Emoto, and I think this was in the 1990s. And he figured out that he can record musical impressions on water by playing different kinds of music in front of water and then freezing the water. And what he was able to see is that when he looked at the water molecules under a microscope, he was able to see what shapes and forms the crystals had made. So he played music like classical music, Bach and Mozart and Beethoven, and all of the water crystals were beautiful. They looked like snowflakes, really, really cool patterns to them, bright colors, things like that. And then he played music like grunge music, heavy metal music, all that stuff. And then you should see the way that these water molecules look. You have to Google Dr. Emoto, Emoto, and then I think there's even a book. It's called The Water Experiment or Water Crystals Experiment. You just type in Dr. Emoto Water Crystals Experiment, and you'll see pictures. I believe there's a full documentary on YouTube about it. It's fascinating. Again, not the sexiest of topics. We're talking about water here, but what we're really talking about is the effects that our technology can have on the water, and not only our technology, as you'll see, as I'll talk about in a second, but also our emotions and our words, and how that affects water crystals just in the exact same way. So that's actually the second part to his experiment, in that he's like, okay, well, if music can affect it, what can words do? So words did the exact same thing. So anything that was associated with love and peace and joy and gratitude, all of that, they would just speak to a container of water. That's what they would do. They would just speak these words to a container of water and then freeze the water, look at the molecules, and see what had formed. And the same thing, these beautiful, bright, cool-looking water crystals had formed. And then when they were saying things like hate and anger and things like that, and yelling at the water, and then I think even one of them was Adolf Hitler, like it actually said Adolf Hitler to the water, and it's just black and distorted and ugly looking. I mean, you could see the difference. There's no comparison. So that kind of stuff, and that's really interesting because when we look at society, research shows that 90% of our thoughts, people's thoughts on a daily basis, are negative in nature. 90%. That number is way too high. And have you ever come in contact with somebody where you start talking to them, they're really, really negative, and all of a sudden you just feel yourself getting brought down. You feel your energy level just going down, and you're like, oh my God, just get me the hell away from this person. I mean, I've had that experience numerous times, and it's toxic, right? So if water is so sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, to music, to words, then it's definitely being affected by people and their energy levels. But it's not just only affecting us, or we're talking about water bottles. It's not just affecting the water that you're drinking. What about the water that's already inside of you, right? Because 55 to 75%, depending on how old you are, and depending on if you're male or female, 55 to 75% of our bodies are made up of water, right? So we're talking about water at the cellular level, water in our organs, water in our muscles. So if we're a negative person and we're constantly feeling down, or we have a lot of hate and anger and resentment build up in our body, what is that doing to the water that we already have in our body, let alone the water that we're going to drink, that's sitting in our water bottle in our refrigerator or sitting next to us in the cars we're driving? Like, what are we doing to the water that's already in our body? It can be toxic. So the final experiment I wanted to share with you was same guy, Dr. Emoto. He took rice and 3 different beakers. He filled the 3 different beakers with rice, and then he covered the rice with water. And he did this experiment over 1 month. And he didn't freeze anything. He didn't take any pictures of water molecules or anything like that. So he went a little different direction. So the first beaker of rice and water, what he did was he said thank you to it every single day. The second beaker, he said, "You're an idiot." And then the third beaker, he just completely ignored. He didn't acknowledge it. He didn't look at it. He didn't say anything to it. Well, I don't know if he didn't look at it, but you know what I'm talking about, right? He didn't acknowledge it at all. So again, 1 month, every single day. Thank you, you're an idiot, and then ignore the third one. You want to guess what the results were? So the first beaker, where he said thank you, it started to actually ferment. And it had like a good yellowish color to it, and it gave off a pleasant aroma. The second beaker, remember he said, "You're an idiot," all of the rice turned black. And he actually took, there's video and pictures of all this stuff too, so he actually documented all this stuff too. It's amazing. Turned black. And then the third jar of rice that he ignored, it began to rot. And you can see the pictures of it. I mean, it was just, turning. It wasn't necessarily black, but it was turning, like green from the mold that was building up in it, and it just looked horrible. So what I thought was really interesting about the experiment, I mean, aside from those 3 things, right? I mean, you're talking and saying, thank you, and then you're an idiot, and so you're giving off, words, but then it's the energy that you're bringing to that water and what it's actually affecting the rice. So it's not just affecting the water, but then it's affecting the water and how the rice was. So you have 2 things being affected by it. So again, think of the rice being like our organs or our cells. The water in our body that is bound with our cells and our muscles and our organs, if we're a negative person or we're around a lot of negative people, what is that doing to the water inside of us? Are we fermenting and giving off a pleasant aroma? Are we turning black inside, or are we rotting inside? Right? So those are things to think about. The piece that I thought was really interesting was how he linked this experiment to lessons on how we can treat our children. So I'm gonna quote Dr. Emoto. He says, "We should take care of them," meaning our children. He said, "We should take care of them, give them attention, and converse with them. Indifference does the greatest harm. It may not always be easy to do, and almost always it takes practice." But I thought that was absolutely amazing, because he's talking about, how we're treating this glass of water and this rice, and how it directly correlates with being a father, being a parent, and how powerful our language can be, right? So you call someone a jerk, and then you call them an asshole, it's going to have a different feeling to it, right? You call a woman a bitch, or you call them the C word, which I actually don't even say. I don't like that word. I think it's dirty. I don't even say it myself. But anyway, you call someone that, a woman particularly, and very different energy and very different response from the woman. I mean, they're not going to be happy about either one, but you better run for your life when you call someone a woman the C word. So, it's just, it shows you how powerful language can be and how it can affect the things around us. And I thought all of that was really, really interesting. And when we're talking about water for improving our health I think we need to take these things into consideration. I think we need to take these things seriously, because with those kinds of statistics, about 90% of our thoughts are negative in nature, and how that can affect the water in our body, how the music we could be listening to can affect the water around us. I mean, it's not to get overwhelmed and say, oh my gosh, I can't have, my, be a fanatic about not keeping your water next to your phone. But I'm not a fanatic about it, and I don't get mad or pissed off if it happens, but I am conscious about it. My wife's actually even more conscious about it. She sees her phone uh, next to a water bottle or something like that. She's like, get that phone away from the water bottle. Not that she's getting mad, but she's just adamant about it. It's important to her, so she's passionate about it. And I think we should all have that kind of passion when it comes to our health, and when it also comes to our kids' health. We're talking about cell phones. I know this is a whole separate topic, but we're talking about cell phones and these electronics that we have. It's not only affecting our water, but it's also affecting our kids. And it's obviously affecting the water inside of their body. I mean, you think of how much more brittle they are, how much thinner their skin is, their bones and their organs are still developing, they're growing. I mean, they're way more sensitive to this stuff than we are, and we haven't even begin to tap into the negative effects that these devices have on our bodies and on our health. But I think we're seeing it, and I think we just need to make the connection. So I think we need to treat it as if it's already, we already know it's a harmful thing and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think it can only get better from there, because the thing is, realistically, unless there's some kind of electrical grid crash or something like that, that might be portrayed in movies or something like that, iPhones are not going anywhere. Android devices aren't going anywhere. Wi-Fi is not going anywhere. If anything, it's getting stronger. I mean, 5G is now going to be coming out. We started with 3G. Now all the phones are 4G. Now 5G is going to be coming out. I've been talking about this for a few months now with my clients. 5G, I feel, is just going to start to rock people's bodies in the worst way possible. I can already sense subtle energies from my phone. I can tell when my phone is too close to me, and I like to keep it as far away from me as I possibly can. I don't really like it to have sit in my pocket. Although I do wear these devices by Aries, and I have a device, or I have one of these little products on my phone which helps your body deal with the electromagnetic frequency and radiation, and it reduces the stress on the body. But when we're talking about the devices, and I know like I said, it's getting off topic from the water, but these devices aren't just having a negative impact on just the water in our bodies, but other aspects to it as well. But we're radioactively charging the water in our body. That is the reality when we're talking about these cell phones, because of the frequency that these things operate at, and because of how strong these things are. So I would encourage you to keep your phone away from your water as much as you possibly can. Keep your phone away from your kids as much as you possibly can. If your kid needs to use a phone, or you let them use a phone, always put it on airplane mode. That's what we always do with our son. And if they are going to play with it, because I know there are certain games that my son likes to play on the iPad, because it only runs on Wi-Fi. We have one of those little devices on the iPad to help shield him from it. And sometimes I'll just take off my pendant that I wear and put it around his neck, and so he can be shielded from it as well, because of how disruptive they are. I mean, I don't know, depending on how old you are listening to this, I never had to deal with this kind of crap when I was younger. My parents never had to think about this kind of stuff with me and my sister growing up, because we didn't have the technology, and it wasn't there. So and when the cell phones did come out, and I got my first cell phone when I was 16 years old, it wasn't nearly as powerful as my iPhone is. So so it's just getting more and more, and the threat, I think, is just going to keep increasing over time. So the more knowledge that we can arm ourselves with, the better choices we can make then. And like I said, it's not going to go anywhere, but if you can make it better, why not do that? So I hope you learned a little bit about water today, and hopefully you'll look at how you choose your water, which water bottles that you're using or drinking out of. Also, the material that you're drinking out of. Just quick side note: I would recommend glass or glass or stainless steel. You can drink out of plastic, however, according to the government, if plastic is deemed safe until proven otherwise. So innocent until proven guilty when it comes to plastic. And for years, the BPA, which stands for bisphenol A, was in so many plastic water bottles, and then we started to see negative effects from it, and the harm that it was doing. And then so now most of the plastic water bottles today are banned. But I don't know if that's the case with a lot of the run-of-the-mill water bottles that are out there. The plastic water bottles, Poland Spring, Nestle, Deer Park, things like that. I don't know if they're BPA free. It's worth looking into. I don't drink those waters, so I don't know, but it's worth looking into, especially if you do drink those waters, because what kind of plastics are in your water bottle that are leaching into the water? Remember, I mean, those kinds of water bottles, it's great that we're using recycled plastic, and it's great that we're recycling for the environment. However, these water bottles are made up of plastics that we don't know if they're safe. And a lot of the water bottles are sitting on these pallets or in these silos, sitting in these hot trucks being transported, sitting out directly in the sun. And that's the reality. And what's happening is it's breaking down the plastics, and those chemicals are leaching into the water, and a lot of those will attack the hormonal system and the nervous system. So, then you start getting chemical imbalances because of the water that you're drinking. So not only is it electrically charged and maybe, negative and all this stuff, but now it's attacking your hormonal system and your nervous system. And it's like, you're just trying to do something good for your body by drinking water. And again, I don't want this to be overwhelming, but it's just things to consider. So, they're quick fixes. Maybe you get a whole house filtration system and you start salting your own water. Every water bottle, just put a pinch of high quality sea salt in there. Boom. Okay. And then you can test your water easily. You get some of those strips or the droplets of water. You test your water and see if it's alkaline or not. Then now they even have devices to increase the alkalinity, I think that's how you say it, the alkalinity in the water. So, and they're like countertop things, and I don't think they're very expensive, but our water is pretty alkaline here, just tap water filtered, because we have a whole house filtration system. Um, so, that could be a quick fix for you, right? I mean, you just buy a whole house filtration system, you don't have to think about the rest. And if you are traveling or you're out and about and you want to get some bottled water, get Evian. It's alkaline. It's got a good pH. It's got a good pH balance, and then it also has a good amount of minerals in it. So I like to keep it as simple as possible. I try not to oversimplify things, but I also try not to make things too complicated, where it'll make your head spin. So anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. I hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. I again really appreciate if you would subscribe, leave any comments in any of the notes wherever you're. Whatever platform you're listening on, and I would love some feedback. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the questions, and I can address it in the beginning of later podcasts, or I'll just type you right back, or I'll make a separate podcast about it. If there's a lot of questions, maybe I'll make a separate episode or video that I'll post up on my YouTube channel, something like that. But I always read the comments and take feedback really, really seriously. So I'd really appreciate that. Plus, it just helps support the podcast and shows me that you're still interested as well. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and get some good quality water in your body, and take your health seriously, because it's really important. And the healthier we are, then we can pass that along to everybody else, because we can't help other people unless we're operating at a high level, right? So we can only give what we have. And if you're a dad, you're a family man, you want to be the best version of yourself, so that you can give the best version of yourself to the people in your life. And you can only do that by taking care of your health. So I encourage you to do that, and thanks for listening. Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Warrior Dads podcast. If you like this podcast and want to support it, please subscribe, leave comments, and share it with someone you think would benefit from listening as well. Thanks again, and keep on being a warrior dad.